Mitch Miller doing some discourse. I just want to speak about one of my initial directions that I have reiterated about is starting a media company and the difficulties of that, and that brings me around to why I've mentioned celebrity names and certain celebrities. And it's very simple. I want to propose some ideas to them. I don't know how to gather them in one place to do that, and I guess my question to all of these social media people and all of these internet startups and internet people: are you going to let those celebrities find me in real time, or are you going to withhold information until I have to figure out something else to do? So I want to tell a little bit of a story from my life, and it has to do with what I've mentioned about paying cable companies to install computer pieces of equipment in your house, and paying for that. How do we get to that area, and why is the United States so accepting of that? And I remember it has a lot to do with corporations gathering information about consumers. And I remember when I was young, I had a bank account, a savings account, and in high school, because I worked. And when I was 18, I received magically in the mail a razor, a shaving razor. So that company, that razor company, they were aware of my 18th birthday, and it was on my 18th birthday, or 16th, one of the two. I think it might have been 16. Either way, I didn't, I had a savings account. I didn't have a debit card, credit cards, anything to track that. So it begs the question of, how did they know my birthday and my, information? Did they lobby the government or something like that? Because I really didn't register that many things. So, you take that and you extrapolate it over another 20 years. Now it's very easy to find out, because you went on the internet and you clicked when you were 12, this or that, and now a company is responsible for keeping track of that information. Back when I was a kid, it was there were 3 companies that were specifically geared towards tracking consumers. I don't know the evolution of those companies, and if they're even still intact and still have to register with the government, or if the government even knows anything about them. I'll make another note. Earlier I said I argued that governments don't know how to regulate these invisible waves. The FCC has known how to regulate them for a very long time. And for some reason, 10 years ago or 5 years ago, Bluetooth technology became the rage in the United States. And the concept behind Bluetooth technology is that they are unregulated waves. So why we are allowed to produce equipment and use equipment in the United States that were based off of unregulated waves makes no sense to me. But we're going to talk about corporations, large American corporations, and in the United States, I'm kind of playing with the idea of human free will in these waves. Do people have free will? Yes. In the year 2016, I absolutely believe they do. I believe I do. But it's a scary path that we're heading down now. As far as free will, it's always been manipulated by mass media, and before it was media that was consumed slowly, like print media, newspapers. Then there was radio, then television with commercials. So in the United States, when there were 3 broadcast networks, the United States saw it as important to have these networks in case of an emergency, to communicate with their population. Certain laws were in place, but there were also certain tax breaks given to companies to allow them to advertise, and that's part of the tax code, that businesses are allowed a certain amount of advertising to take to put against their tax burden, and the extent of that and the limitation on that, I'm not sure, especially if you have a large corporation that's cut up into a bunch of smaller companies, possibly specifically so that each entity can consider itself separate to maximize the amount of tax break you get for advertising. Is this okay? In my opinion, for small local regional businesses, yes, that's fine, but for large multinational corporations, I think that the regulation is not adequate in my opinion, but I haven't researched it to a huge degree. The point is that you have also a tax code in the United States for churches, where they don't have to pay taxes on real estate or anything of the like. So, you know, in the novel I wrote, I kind of made a reference to the religion of business, and so you have people that almost exercise business practices as though it's a religion, and then you have a tax structure where they're allowed to promote this ideology through mass media, tax-free. So is that dangerous? Yeah, it can be. But, you know, to that note, I'm going to pause for... So what happens when everybody stops watching television? They all stream video on their devices, their phones and computers. Where does advertising go from there? And how are those huge gross revenue, monetary products funneled? So at that point, do those three consumer tracking and information gathering companies, do they at that point dissolve, and do these each international conglomerate corporation go in-house with their information and consumer tracking abilities, using it as some type of advertising revenue argument, or advertising argument to get a tax break? I don't know. Does the federal government investigate that type of thing? Again, I don't know. Those are the dangers of the age of the internet, is how can you get a reduction on your taxes by arguing that this is just a new form of advertising, and so it goes back to paying for equipment in your house to spy on you, and what I was saying about intelligence agencies. So if you're a corporation and you know information about populations, is that intelligence? And if one business guy says this is information gathering, to me, that's just another word for spying. And you're paying for that equipment in your house, and it can gather information on you. Whether you're using it to sell products or you're using it to sell to people or other entities, what does that mean, and why do you allow it, and why do you pay for it? Because you can go back to the way that we all grew up with, where it didn't do that. So sorry, I'm going to pause. So then it comes back around to the internet, accountability, and so if you're paying for this information structure, then I think that it's in your best interest to allow a symbol or an example of how it did work. I paid for years and years and years because I believed in this information network, and so now there's one person that did do exactly what we told our kids that it was going to do, and hopefully other ones spring up in the other places. But so to that note, when the internet was first starting and you had a website, you could put a little ticker on there and it showed how many people clicked and went into your website. Those days I think are gone, or they still make them, but the accuracy of them I question. But again, I have no proof. I just know that 391 people have seen my website this month. I hope that's accurate. I'm getting that information directly from the domain name people. But part of the issue I had with social media and things like that is how do you gather the information to then say that there's this many people of an audience that are interested in what I do have to say. So as I said, the initial video I put up a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I loaded it directly to the social media platform Facebook, and it got a bunch of views, but there's no way to accurately track or transfer that information because it can get isolated into other groups, and then you don't know how much they're sharing it with other people. And if it's not tied back to the YouTube media, that's not registering with YouTube, so then you lose that data that you could make an argument that you do have some kind of following. So I guess the question is the social media, the way it's promoted as a way to share information, really that viable? I have a lot of arguments against that, I guess. I'm going to close with that because it's getting really long, and but that's the reason I reached out to these celebrities, because their YouTube or their social media accounts are viable because they're checked and double checked, and there's no reason why theirs would be manipulated, because it's pretty evident that people want to see what they have to say. So manipulating a couple thousand views here or there wouldn't really affect anything that they're doing. They're already promoted, they're already pumped up, they're celebrities. They don't need a bunch of views on Facebook to wake up in the morning and feel like they're special. That's why I mentioned their names, and that's why I'm looking for their help, because as I said, I'd like to kind of stop shooting these videos and just allow them to promote me in the way that that best fits some of the ideology and the way that they're comfortable with, I guess. So yeah, that's Mitch Miller.